Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. A gang of women bullies a young black girl, without knowing she is a military leader. Raven Johnson was finally back in the United States. The flight from Germany had been long, but not as long as the harrowing months spent at a strategic NATO base in Eastern Europe. For 10 months, she had led a unit tasked with analyzing enemy movements, coordinating covert operations, and overseeing the security of several American embassies. There had been tensions, threats, sleepless nights. Raven hadn't just commanded, she'd shouldered the pressure, the fear, the responsibilities. There, she was a beacon of authority, a quiet force. When she returned, she wanted no ceremony, no welcome meeting. Just silence. Rest. Calm. At 29, she was already a captain in the U.S. Army, a rank she earned through her tactical intelligence, her rigor, and also her humanity. Specializing in military intelligence and operational strategy, she had participated in classified missions. In the military, she inspired respect. Her soldiers nicknamed her the Eye of the Tiger, because even in the most tense situations, she maintained that calm, piercing, and focused gaze. But in civilian life, Raven kept a low profile. She never wore her medals. She never talked about her exploits. She walked like everyone else, dressed simply, speaking little. She knew that in some environments, especially in the United States, her uniform frightened or disturbed people. So she blended in. She didn't just hate attracting attention, she had learned to protect herself from it. That Saturday, the South Carolina sun was beating down. The streets of Charleston were bustling with activity. Raven had promised her niece Elena a shopping trip to celebrate the end of her school year. Elena, 17, lively, curious, and funny, dreamed of becoming a stylist or a fashion journalist. Ever since she was little, she had looked up to her aunt with admiration, not for her decorations, but for her quiet strength and dry sense of humor. "Auntie, come on. I really want to show you this store. They have amazing dresses at Velveteen. Like, they're so my style." Raven rolled her eyes and smiled. She wore simple raw-edge jeans, a black, logo-free t-shirt, white sneakers, and sunglasses. No sign of a uniform. Just a woman on leave. "Okay, but we're not staying for 2 hours. I didn't come here for you to try on 20 outfits, understand?" "Promise," Elena replied with that innocent smile she always used to coax her aunt. They walked arm in arm, through the glass doors of the mall. The interior was air-conditioned, cozy, and adorned with dazzling window displays. Elegantly dressed women strolled by, designer bags on their arms. Raven tried not to scan the surroundings too much, her military instincts still sharp, even after years. It was beyond her control, she spotted the exits, analyzed behavior, anticipated crowd movements. But today she just wanted to be Dad Raven. Not Captain Johnson. They arrived in front of Velveteen, a luxury boutique known for its $1,000 dresses, haughty saleswomen, and selective customers. Elena beamed. "Come on, look at this satin green dress, it's magnificent." Raven nodded, amused. She loved this moment, watching her niece grow, blossom, dream. That was also why she served. To protect that carefree attitude. No sooner had Raven and Elena walked through the glass door of the shop of course that the atmosphere changed subtly, but abruptly. The lighting was soft, the shelves carefully arranged, the background music delicate, a piano jazz meant to inspire luxury and lightness. Yet there was something sharp in the air. A suspended silence. A silent judgment, yet heavy as lead. 3 women, sitting in the gold velvet armchairs at the back of the shop, turned their heads as one. As if an unpleasant draft had just disturbed their privileged bubble. Their eyes narrowed. Their gestures slowed. Their entire body language transformed, arms crossed, chins raised, tight smiles. Tina McAllister, 27, at the center of the trio, held a glass of cucumber-infused water in one hand and a Chanel bag, which she dangled casually from the side of the hand in the other. She wore a perfectly fitted green silk dress, and her Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floor as she moved. The only child of a prominent Charleston corporate lawyer, she had grown up in a culture of quiet but entrenched elitism, where elegance was merely a veneer over deeply rooted contempt. To his right, Clarissa, an Instagram influencer with artificially tanned skin and perfectly wavy hair, scrolled through stories on her phone while casting pointed glances at the newcomers. She was 25 but already spoke of her followers as a moral capital. She wore a super tight beige dress, and her manicured nails glistened under the shop spotlights. Danica, the third, 28, a lawyer at a reputable firm, was the quietest, but perhaps the most outspoken. Behind sunglasses, which she hadn't removed, even indoors, she sized up Raven and Elena like a statistical anomaly. Raven sensed it all. She sensed it the way a soldier senses an ambush before it explodes. It wasn't a look. It was a barrage of innuendo. But she didn't react. She knew how to recognize minefields, even those that wore perfume. Elena, on the other hand, young, lively, whole, already felt anger rising. Clarissa, pretending to look at a pair of expensive sandals, whispered in a cold, barely audible tone. "Looks like they've opened an entrance for people from the North End now." The implication was clear. Charleston's North End was synonymous with poverty, minorities, and the things these types of customers preferred not to see, except in carefully filtered inclusive advertising campaigns. Danica burst into a short, mocking laugh, without looking up. "Do you think she mistook this store for a garage sale?" Tina stood up slowly. Each step of her heels was measured, like a parade. She approached, her smile fixed, but her eyes icy. "Excuse me," she said, addressing Raven, "but this section is private. We've booked in for a VIP session." Raven slowly turned her head toward her, arms crossed. She looked around. No signs, no signage, no employee had told them anything. "There was no sign, and the saleswoman let us in," she replied in a calm, almost flat tone. Tina shrugged, her head tilted slightly, that arrogant smile plastered on her lips. "Yeah, but sometimes you have to know how to read the mood, not just the signs." Elena felt her heart pound. Humiliation hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. The tone, the looks, the stifled laughter, none of it was a misunderstanding. It was an assumed, institutionalized contempt, coated with a veneer of toxic politeness. She took a step forward, her gaze fixed on Tina's. "Do you always talk to people like that, or is it just black women you treat this way?" Her voice trembled slightly, but it was firm. She was only a teenager, but that day she spoke with the dignity of a woman standing up to injustice. Tina raised an eyebrow, her face already twisted into that sneer she was so fond of. "Oh, relax, kiddo. We're just joking. If you're offended that easily, maybe this store just isn't for you." She punctuated her sentence with a forced laugh that her two friends imitated, as if to better dominate the space. Raven, who had remained motionless until then, almost a spectator, slowly removed her sunglasses. A simple gesture, but heavy with meaning. Her eyes revealed themselves, dark, deep, unwavering. An icy silence fell over the room. Even the saleswoman, who until then had been pretending to sort belts, stopped dead in her tracks. She looked at Tina without raising her voice, but each word she spoke echoed like a blade in the still air. "You know what I find fascinating," she said in a tone so calm it became sharp. "This compulsive need to put others down in order to exist." "Are you talking about the atmosphere?" "The atmosphere here is mostly one of ignorance. A polite ignorance, dressed in silk, perfumed with Chanel. But ignorance, nonetheless." Clarissa burst into a mocking chuckle, crossing her arms smugly. "And you, who do you think you are, seriously? A life coach? A philosophical waitress?" Raven turned his head toward her, unblinking, unangry. His face remained serene, but his gaze held the strength of years of struggle, discipline, and pain endured without ever bowing. "I'm a captain in the U.S. Army. Unit leader. specializing in critical operations. My team and I have secured embassies, evacuated civilians, defused conflicts in areas you wouldn't even dare Google. I've carried my wounded brothers in arms on my shoulders, I've slept in the snow, in the sand, in fear. And all of this, without ever asking for recognition from women like you. An icy silence fell over the room. Even the music in the background suddenly seemed ridiculous. Tina, frozen for a moment, burst into a high-pitched, almost nervous laugh. Yeah, sure. And I'm an astronaut. You look like a babysitter, not a soldier. Go tell that story somewhere else, babe. We buy dresses here, not fables. Raven looked at her for a long time. She didn't answer right away. She let her sink into her own contempt, her own blindness. Then, slowly, she put her glasses back on. The saddest thing about all this, she said, her voice soft but firm, it's not that you don't believe me. It's that even if I showed you my uniform, my badges, my decorations, you'd still prefer to believe that I'm lying. Because to you, a black woman can't be what I am. To you, we only exist in limited boxes, victim, waitress, public danger, but never leader. Never savior. Never heroine. She turned to Elena, who was looking at her proudly, her eyes shining. Come on, we have better things to do. Then, with that quiet elegance that only true power can embody, Raven Johnson left the shop. Erect. Dignified. Unwavering. She didn't slam the door. She left behind a void. And 3 frozen women. Confused. Fragile beneath their masks of arrogance. Perhaps for the first time, they were confronted with a reality they could neither understand nor control. And in the silence that followed, it wasn't Raven who had been diminished. It was their world, small, fragile, built on illusions, that had just shaken. 3 days later, the scenery had changed radically. The Charleston Military Center was unrecognizable, adorned with banners, flags, and the Department of Defense emblem. It was hosting a high-level conference on strategic command and civil-military partnerships. Politicians, senior officers, national security officials, and representatives of major private firms crowded into the auditorium. Badges glittered, suits were pressed to the millimeter, and handshakes followed one another with measured smiles. In the third row, sitting upright in her cream suit, Tina McAllister distractedly flipped through her file. Her law firm, Carver & Doyle LLP, was applying for a government contract related to logistics for international missions. It was a major challenge. She had insisted on accompanying the firm's founder in person, hoping to expand her influence with military decision-makers. She hadn't slept all night, consumed by a confused mixture of tension, stress, and a diffuse malaise that she couldn't shake. She was nervously tapping her pen on her notepad when the announcement came. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker. An exceptional woman. A formidable strategist, an exemplary leader, Captain Raven Johnson, commander of Task Force 42. Tina stopped breathing. She raised her head slowly. A cold shiver ran down her spine. The doors opened. And Raven appeared. She wore her ceremonial uniform, immaculate. The medals lined up on her chest reflected the spotlights on the stage. Her stripes shone like gold under the spotlights. Every step she took was assured, steady, calm. It was her. The one she had humiliated in a luxury boutique. The one she had taken for a liar. The one she had treated like an intruder. Tina's face fell. She felt heat rush through her, then cold sweat run down her spine. She wanted to look away, but Raven's gaze found her in the crowd, and wouldn't let go. The entire room rose. Officers clicked their heels. The audience applauded fervently. But Tina remained seated, rooted to her seat, unable to move. Raven walked onto the stage with quiet grace. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. Her mere presence commanded respect. She approached the lectern. The auditorium fell silent. Then she spoke. Some of you may have already crossed paths with me in recent days, without knowing who I was. That's normal. In the street, in a store, in an airport. I don't always wear this uniform. I don't always walk around with my decorations. And yet. She paused. Her gaze slid slowly over the audience. When it met Tina's again, it was like a silent burning. I'm still the same. I'm still a captain. I'm still a strategist. I'm still the woman my soldiers would follow to the ends of the earth. But on the outside, far from that microphone, far from that badge, what I am, isn't always enough to be respected. Tina felt her throat tighten. She stared at the ground. She wanted to disappear. Today, I'm not just here to talk about military leadership. I'm here to talk about respect. About values. About ethics. And about the question we all need to ask ourselves, how do we treat people, when we know nothing about them? A murmur ran through the room. Emotions were rising. Some nodded, touched. Others noted every word. But Tina, for her part, was trapped in an invisible, intimate, implacable confrontation. She saw herself again in that shop, surrounded by her friends, laughing, humiliated, self-assured. And now, she faced the naked reality. This woman, whom she had judged incapable, inferior, invisible, was here hailed as a national heroine. Leadership is not just a matter of uniform. It begins with our ability to see the dignity of others, even when they bear no title or costume. And this ability should be required of every citizen, not just soldiers. Raven finished her speech to a round of applause. She bowed, then calmly stepped off the stage. Tina doesn't applaud. She stood there motionless, her hands trembling, tears welling in her eyes. Not public shame, no. Private shame. That's the kind that hurts the most. The conference was over, and the guests were gradually leaving the amphitheater, exchanging business cards, handshakes, and diplomatic smiles. The atmosphere was cordial, electric, and filled with admiration for the final speaker. She looked at her for a long time. Then she said, in a calm, almost gentle tone, but one that cut through the air like a sharp blade. And if I had been a cleaning lady, your behavior would have been justified? Tina froze. She hadn't anticipated this question. She blinked. She wanted to answer. But no words came out. Raven tilted her head slightly, as if to probe the silence. She continued, still in that calm voice, without an ounce of aggression. The problem, Tina, isn't that you didn't know who I was. It's that you thought you already knew everything. You didn't see me. You saw what you wanted to see, a foreigner. A black woman. An intruder. In 1 second, you decided everything about me. My place. My intelligence. My worth. Tina opened her mouth, then closed it. She had never been so naked, so helpless. I'm sorry, she finally breathed, her voice breaking, her eyes moist. She was no longer the arrogant Tina of Velveteen. She was no longer the brilliant, self-confident lawyer, heiress to privilege. She was a woman who had just fallen from a great height. Raven nodded slowly. Not in contempt, nor in triumph. But as someone recognizing a tiny step in the right direction. You can do better. Tina looked up, surprised by the simplicity of her tone. There was no anger or vengeance in Raven's words. Only a deep demand. Learn to listen. Learn to see. Not with your eyes, Tina. With your heart. With your humility. She paused. Then added. And one day, maybe, you'll understand what you missed that day. Not just by despising me. But by limiting yourself. By confining yourself to a world too small for true greatness. She let the words hang in the air. Then she walked away, without another word. She didn't turn around. Tina watched her walk away, unable to move. The tears she had been holding back finally fell. Silent. Liberating. That day, she didn't just lose face. She lost an illusion. And that was the beginning of something else. But in a corner near the large glass door, Tina McAllister stood motionless, her heart pounding. She clutched her purse like a life jacket, trying to control her breathing. Raven's words still echoed in her mind, like an unsilenced echo. She didn't know why she was staying there. She could have run away, as her wounded pride screamed at her. But something, a mixture of shame, lucidity, and painful curiosity, held her back. She repeated this phrase to herself over and over, "You didn't see me. You thought you knew everything about me." And then she saw her approaching. Raven was leaving the room, flanked by 2 officers. But she walked with that sovereign calm, unhurried, upright, as if she were carrying a world on her shoulders without suffering. She was radiant, without trying to shine. Tina felt her legs give way. She took a hesitant step. Then another. "Captain Johnson, her voice trembled, so low she nearly choked. "I didn't know." Raven stopped. Slowly. She turned to face her. His face was perfectly impassive. Not cold, not cruel. Just, full of truth. 1 year later, a lot had changed. Not in the world, not yet, but in the heart and conscience of Tina McAllister. Since that day at the military center, when she saw a woman enter whom she thought she could trample without consequences, Tina had undertaken a profound transformation. Not a mere public relations stunt. Not a posturing. A true introspection. She had started by reading. Listening. Being silent. She then enrolled in a mentoring program for young women from ethnic minorities, organized by the association, Voices Rising. Every week, she listened to the stories of teenage girls and young professionals with bumpy paths, full of resilience and courage. She no longer gave advice lightly. She no longer imposed herself. She learned to sit back, to look, to listen. She had also spoken publicly. Not to redeem herself, for she knew that some wounds cannot be repaired with words, but to use your voice differently to alert, denounce, open doors that it had previously helped to close. That evening, in a large conference room in Atlanta, she was invited to speak at a forum on female leadership and inclusivity. The audience was diverse, young, and vibrant. The event was streamed online. Tina took the stage. She wore a simple, unadorned suit. She held a few sheets of paper but barely looked at them. She took a deep breath and spoke in a firm but emotional voice. "I thought I knew it all. I had a good degree. A great career. Connections. And I thought that was enough to understand the world. But I was blind." A respectful silence fell over the room. "A year ago, I humiliated a black woman in a store. For no reason. By reflex. By ignorance. By social automatism. And this woman didn't get angry. She didn't scream. She didn't seek revenge. She looked at me. And with a few words, she broke me, without violence. She forced me to see myself as I was. Arrogant. Superficial. And profoundly unfair." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Tina continued, her voice lower. This woman was no ordinary client. She was Captain Raven Johnson, a unit commander in the U.S. Army. A strategist. A leader. A hero. And I didn't see her. Because I didn't want to see. Because she didn't fit my image of what power should look like. She paused, then concluded, her eyes moist. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her mere presence was enough. "Today, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to never wait to be seen, assert yourself. And to those who ignore you, become their lesson." The room applauds. Standing up. At length. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Raven Johnson continued to serve. Still as discreet. Still as effective. She had been promoted to the rank of major, commanding a special section assigned to sensitive interventions in civilian areas. She supervised, trained, and inspired. She didn't seek the spotlight. She knew her fight wasn't just in military theaters of operation. It was everywhere. In the hallways. The stores. The job interviews. In the looks. She didn't need recognition. But she knew that what she embodied mattered. To Elena. To all the young women who crossed her path. To those growing up in a world where they were still told they had to prove twice as much to be judged half as equal. And she was ready. Not just in combat gear. Ready to respond to ignorance with excellence. To arrogance through dignity. To invisibility through presence. Because every black woman who stands tall in a world that wants to bend her, is already a victory. And Raven Johnson, still walked in the front lines.